Hi there, part 2 of the 3-part tutorial on how to create these animated titles. This stage focuses on layering and adding multiple video tracks that you'll need to make the effect. So, to start off with, you're going to need a grand total of 9 video tracks. To do this, click on the overlay track and press F9 7 times. Now you've got all 9 layers, scroll through them and shrink them down to size. Now we're going to rename all the tracks to make it easier to work with. At the bottom, your first track is going to be black. Then, moving up, will be color, chalk, two for the 2 grunge splotches, lines, below text, above text, old book, or whatever texture you've chosen, and finally, vignette. With all the video tracks named, we'll start the effect. Selecting the base layer, black, we're going to add a background. Go over to Insert, CG Clip, Background. Change its color to black and its duration on the timeline to 10 seconds. Zoom in on the timeline so things are easier to work with. On the second layer, color, add another background by going to Insert, CG Clip, Background, but this time changing its color to light grey and lowering its opacity. Extend the clip's duration to 10 seconds. On the next layer, we're going to place the chalk PNG that was created in the last tutorial. As you can see, I've already imported all the assets needed to create this effect. Bring the chalk PNG to the timeline and drag out its duration to the end. Then go over to Transform and move it to the corner, making sure that there are no straight edges visible. On the layer above, place the PNG of the 2 grunge splodges and drag them out to the end. Select Transform, make them larger, and position them to the left. Then, on the Lines track, bring in the squiggle line created in the previous tutorial. If you drag the entire image to the corner of the screen, it is easier to make it larger. Now we're going to add the text. By having 2 distinct tracks for the 2 lines of text, it allows you to animate them separately. On Below Text, go over to Galleries, Text, Titles, and choose Center White. For the bottom text, I chose to write a stereotypical horror title, whilst for the above text, I chose something you'd expect to see in a horror film or trailer. Once typed, highlight everything and click Format. Here you can change it to a more suitable horror font. I chose Decrepit BRK. When making these titles, make sure you click the FX Effects button and untick Drop Shadow. The text is then placed somewhere in the bottom left corner of the screen, and its duration dragged to the end. These steps are repeated for adding the above text by going Galleries, Text, Titles, and selecting Center White. The drop shadow is removed and the text changed to something more suitable, like Decrepit. To make it stand out and fit in with horror conventions, I highlighted, twisted, and changed its color to red. Shrink the text, move it to the left corner, and make sure it's above the below text. Also, make sure it's the same amount of time as the other layers. Finally, we come to the last two stages. We're going to add the photos and scans of textures from the last tutorial. These textures should be interesting, like tree bark or tattered books. Take one onto the timeline and drag it to the end. If it is portrait, click on Transform and rotate the image so it covers the entire screen. Still on the texture image, go to General and change the blend mode to Mask. And finally, add a pre-made vignette which adds a shadow border to the clip. When I placed my vignette onto the timeline, it is too intense, so I go over to Crop and make it match aspect ratio. Keeping the 16:9 aspect ratio, I scale it down and center the crop. Now there is a light shadow surrounding the edges. Now all the stages are complete and ready to be animated. I hope you liked this part of the tutorial. Click on the annotations or links in the description for the final or previous stages. And as always, thank you, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you.